If you're someone who is interested in or studying urban planning like me, I bet you have heard of Robert Moses and how highways built under his lead in and around New York City has cut through neighborhoods, displaced homes, and disconnected communities. While some of his plans like the Cross Bronx Expressway, Brooklyn-Queens Expressways were successfully built, there are many of his plans that remain on the drawing board and never became reality. One of those plans is the Lower Manhattan Expressway, a controversial highway project that would run through Lower Manhattan, connecting the bridges and tunnels of the Hudson and East Rivers. In today's video, we will find out the story behind this controversial highway. To understand how the Lower Manhattan Expressway was proposed, we need to go back to 1927 when the Holland Tunnel opened. The Holland Tunnel ran under the Hudson River, connecting Lower Manhattan and New Jersey, becoming the first vehicular crossing to do so. The tunnel was so popular that in its initial year of opening, it was used by 8.5 million vehicles. However, the streets in Lower Manhattan was not ready for such huge traffic flow, causing serious congestion on those narrow streets. 2 years later, a plan for an artery for vehicular traffic between the Holland Tunnel and the Manhattan Bridge was included in the Regional Plan of New York and its emergence released by the Regional Plan Association. This plan is seen as the origins of the Lower Manhattan Expressway, but the plan did not seem to get much attention as was only vaguely mentioned throughout the years. At the time, Robert Moses was head of the New York State Parks Commission and did not have any power to conduct a highway in Manhattan. But Robert Moses did not stop there and has expanded his power in the years coming. In 1934, Robert Moses was appointed as head of the Tri-Borough Bridge and Tunnel Authority by the mayor at the time, Ferrilo LaGuardia, thus putting him in charge of the city's traffic, roads, and bridges. In 1939, the Lower Manhattan Expressway was proposed by the City Planning Commission to run between the Holland Tunnel to the west and the Manhattan and Williamsburg Bridge to the east, cutting through Lower Manhattan neighborhoods like Soho and Little Italy. Robert Moses was one of the biggest supporters of this highway project, and just 2 years later, the Lower Manhattan Expressway was officially approved in the city plans. By the end of that same year, the U.S. entered World War II, and Lower Manhattan Expressway was included in Robert Moses' 1941 National Defense Proposal as a project that would quote-unquote not only to relieve congestion, but also to serve defense functions. By 1943, there were multiple proposals for the Lower Manhattan Expressway, while the suggested alternative was a 6-lane, double-decked, controlled access highway between the West Side Highway and the Manhattan Bridge that would run south of Canal Street on the north side of Beach and White Streets. The estimated cost was $23 million. However, the city prioritized other road projects such as Brooklyn Barrington Tunnel and FDR Drive. So despite funding secured from the New York State Legislature in 1944, the Lower Manhattan Expressway did not move forward. But Robert Moses definitely did not give up on his plans to build this highway. Just 2 years later, he proposed a direct route between the Holland Tunnel and the Manhattan and Williamsburg bridges. The proposal was included in the 1955 Joint Study of Arterial Facilities conducted by the Tri-Borough Bridge and Tunnel Authority and the Port of New York Authority. The cost for the new proposal was $72 million. However, Moses' highway plan will have disruption to the neighborhood it ran through, requiring the displacement of 1,972 families and 804 businesses, as well as knocking down a handful of historical buildings. This has led to a public opposition. American-Canadian journalist and activist Jane Jacobs formed a committee and pulled together other organizations to fight against the Lower Manhattan Expressway. But these oppositions did not stop Moses. His proposal was able to gain federal support, thus being included in the 1955 Yellow Book, aka the Federal Bureau of Public Roads. The project was also mentioned in the Tri-State Transportation Commission's 1966 report, Transportation 1985 Original Plan. The Lower Manhattan Expressway, along with the 3 rural crossings, received interstate highway designations. The expressway was signed as Interstate 78, while the spur to Manhattan Bridge was signed as Interstate 478. The entire complex was estimated to cost $104 million, with eligibility for 90% of federal funding. In 1962, an approach undercrossing to the expressway was built at Crystal and Broomy Street, but construction ended later that year due to restricted budget appropriation from the New York City Board of Estimates. This approach was perhaps the only segment that was ever built for the Lower Manhattan Expressway. In 1968, Mayor Lindsay proposed building the Lower Manhattan Expressway using cut and cover and tunnel construction while utilizing the space above for buildings and parks. The plan was given a completion date of 1978. However, the idea still saw opponents claiming that they don't want a highway at all. And there were also findings showing that the traffic counts Lindsay and Moses used to support their claims were from 1958, which was 10 years ago when the plan was approved, and will be 20 years old when the expressway is set to open. Furthermore, studies predicted that the highway would increase carbon monoxide. Due to all these concerns, the New York City Board of Estimates demapped the Lower Manhattan Expressway in August 1969, and the project was officially killed by Governor Nelson Rockefeller on March 24, 1971. After the cancellation, the Interstate 478 designation along with the interstate funding for the project was transferred to the West Side Highway Reconstruction Project. 10 years after the Lower Manhattan Expressway was cancelled, Robert Moses passed away, marking a complete end to his era. Decades later from Moses' death, there were still individuals who wanted to revise the plan. These plans never made it to reality. I can't imagine how Lower Manhattan would be like if the highway was built. My urban planning knowledge tells me that the highway will not solve traffic congestion as it promised and will have brought pollution and disruption to neighborhoods in the area. We should feel lucky that the project was kept on paper and never went through. I hope that it will never become a reality. And that is the full story of the Lower Manhattan Expressway, a highway that was cancelled for the good. If you're interested in walkability, public transit, mixed-use development, and other urban planning topics, then this is the channel for you. In upcoming videos, I will cover both built and cancelled highway projects proposed by Robert Moses, how they impacted the surrounding communities. Subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any of that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.